To order, it is 1:01. Today is Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020. This is our superintendent workshop. We are still abiding by CDC guidelines, and we are having our meetings set up where some of our school board members are joining us via Teams. In the room today, we have Dr. Moore, myself, Mrs. Justice, and Mrs. DiAgresta that is setting up here. We are trying to abide by the 6 feet distance, and then we have staff that's separated throughout the room. Joining us on Teams, we have Mrs. Barenborg, Mrs. Rosario, and Dr. Schiff. At this time, I am going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Moore, and he's going to explain the items that he would like to present to the board today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have a number of items to be presented today by myself as well as other cabinet members. We will have a presentation from Mr. Meyer regarding renewal of contracts. We will have a presentation regarding the possible amendment to the instructional calendar, which I will cover that item. Presentation regarding district-wide expenditure requirements, Mr. Fagan. Presentation regarding salary book, Mr. Bass and myself. And then finally, we will conclude the presentation regarding the reorganization, in which I will cover that item. To kick us off today, Mr. Meyer will begin, as stated, with annual renewal of contracts. Mr. Meyer.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Through the chair, while I have not presented as many items as other cabinet members the past few months, I'm going to make up for it today. I have a number here that I get to present to you, and I think I have a number in July, so it is not quite the Rick Meyer show, but I am excited to present these items to you today. So the first item is the renewal of the iReady software that the district uses to provide a supplemental resource for reading and math, and also to diagnose individual student deficiencies and to be able to target instruction. It's a program that's been used in the district for a number of years. Certainly was instrumental in us being able to deliver distance learning, remote learning to our students. Obviously, a lot to discuss in the future of what that looks like, but it's certainly something that we recommend continuing to use as long as the standards remain the same. The cost, you know, I can see where there may be concerns about the cost, right? It's $495,000, but when you break that down by student, it's only in the range of around $20 per student for reading and $20 per math, and that comes for professional development. So compare that to the price of a consumable workbook for all the curriculum resources that it provides, the ability to diagnose and screen students. I think it's definitely a big value add for the district. So happy to entertain any questions. I would say that we will be bringing a item later on around the use as far as the assessment calendar. So we're not quite ready to discuss that yet. This is more just the renewal of the contract moving into next year. So happy to take any questions.
All right, board members, any questions? I do not see any.
I have a question. I'm sorry.
Dr. Schiff?
A quick one, but you sort of addressed it as I was typing comment, which is, well, I understand that this is simply about the contract. I want to reiterate conversations that we started earlier this spring about reevaluating how we're using this and the testing schedule, so that we're not overusing this in any way, using it in place of direct curriculum teacher instruction. And I just want to make sure that we address that into people who are concerned about the degree to which we use it and how we use it.
Absolutely, and once again, reiterate that it is just a supplementary resource. It is only recommended for a minimum number of minutes a week. It's not supposed to be 10 hours a week or anything like that. We did see instances where it was heavily used in the distance learning methodology, but in a traditional classroom, it's just a supplementary resource. And as I stated, we'll be bringing a item once it's finalized as far as the assessment calendar. And there's a big emphasis on reducing assessment next year, so I think you'll be happy with that.
Okay, Mrs. Justice?
Yes, thank you. Hello, Mr. Meyer. While I recognize and I appreciate the fact that you would like to have a discussion regarding usage and implementation around iReady when at a different time, right now, this is renewing a contract. So for me, this is the time that would be appropriate to have that conversation before we spend $500,000 on something that we're using in our classrooms. You're right, we did utilize iReady. It was relied upon quite heavily in the school district of Indian River County during the distance learning portion, or the, what was the name of the
Instructional provision plan?
The instructional provision plan, thank you. I'm gonna just call it distance learning from now on. So my son and my two sons, elementary school, were on iReady. iReady was required mostly it was every day for the most part. I watched my second grader struggle during the diagnostic because he was being asked things that he hadn't covered in class. And he was worried that he was not smart, or that he had missed things in class and somehow other children would be performing just fine and that he wouldn't be able to continue on to third grade. So in the midst of all of these things happening, right, so I'm looking at iReady and I'm looking at these questions, and they are questions that are fourth grade standards. He's in second grade. So I'm listening today, and I know you're bringing the contract back, and I know you'd like us to approve it. When I brought concerns to Dr. Moore, he said implementation is the biggest issue we have with iReady, that we're not using it properly. And I've heard from lots of parents, parents of students with exceptional needs, teachers who have students with exceptional needs who feel that the use of iReady in the classroom is not what's best by their students. So I hope we do address implementation. I'm going to be watching very closely as to how we use iReady in the future. In the future, just to be honest, to be brought a contract with a promise and a hope that it will be different than it was in the past without the plan showing me how it will be different makes me uncomfortable. I trust in you, in Mr. Meyer and Dr. Moore, but can you understand my reticence in approving something that has proven to be questionable sometimes?
Through the chair, absolutely, but let me give you assurances. iReady is a tool that is used to provide support to children where children need that support. And when I say implementation, it is a tool that should not be misused but prescribed based on a specific prescription. And a lot of times, and this was a growing pain in Miami, in order to ensure that we were using it appropriately and the appropriate dosage was being provided to the appropriate student. So there was a tiered approach in which we monitored both the usage by teacher and the impact it was having on students. So I am extremely confident in regards to how iReady should be used based on my previous experience in using it and the outcomes it was a part in producing. Nothing will ever replace the teacher. This is a tool that is used by the teacher. Our job is to ensure we provide guidance and support on the effective use. But the number one system of support is on how we grow and support our teachers to use all of the instructional resources that we provide to them. And we will ensure that that happens.
So my answer back to that, and then I'll be done, Mrs. Sork, is thank you. You have, and as I've said this before, walked the walk, both of you, have demonstrated that you want to be best by children. And so I put trust and faith in the fact that going forward, all of these different issues that we've seen with iReady will be addressed in the future. Thank you.
And through the chair, I do thank you for the comments. I think that one thing we did learn from being bold and administering that third diagnostic, the expectations better to the students and message the expectations and how that works to the parents so they feel more comfortable. Because you're right, this is, I think you know, but I'll say it, I mean, it's a computer adaptive diagnostic, so it gets more challenging as the students get the questions right, up to the point where they miss them.
Right.
And if we don't explain that that's okay, if we don't tell them that that's the intentionality behind it, they're doing a great job. wonderful. There's no need to fear that. Let's just find out how far you can go. Then it does create that apprehension in both the child and the parent, and that's an opportunity for us to improve upon. So I think that it was well heard. I heard that from a number of other parents, and I committed to them to do a better job when we roll out Diagnostic 1 to be able to communicate that and how it's used and the expectations. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mrs. Rosario?
Oh, I'm not muted. I thought I was muted. Thank you, Madam Chair. On this topic, though I am happy to support and approve the continuation of iReady, just to touch a little bit on what Mrs. Justice was talking about with her son, is that in the classroom, and what Dr. Moore was saying is that in the classroom, though the teacher leads the instruction, most diagnostic tools are meant to identify what areas a child needs more help in. So if a child on diagnostic tests or anything else that is diagnostic for that purpose is asked a question that they are not familiar with, the result of that answer drives the instruction. It drives the teaching and the lesson planning for the teacher to identify the student's strengths and weaknesses. It also drives the lesson planning on differentiating those lessons that should be taught. So there's maybe Mr. Meyer, would you not agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think part of the implementation that I am absolutely confident Dr. Moore and Mr. Meyer will ensure will be different moving forward is the communication of what that means to parents, because parents may not know that. Kids may not even know that they're being asked a question that they don't know. If the whole entire thing is something they don't know, then we've got a problem. But when there's a question here or there, it actually should be used to drive and tailor the instruction specifically to that child. I also, on this note, want to encourage all teachers, Dr. Moore, Mr. Meyer, to let's not rely heavily on technical tools for reading instruction. I am a proponent and I love books. I love real books and real libraries. And I still take my son to a library. But some of these, what we're moving away from, and I don't want us to, is understanding that some kids are just not good computer takers. They're just not good on computers. Even though we are in a day and age of technology, there are still some kids that are much better with paper pencil. And that kind of diagnostic, we need to find a good balance to allow children who's better at a paper pencil diagnostic than they are on iReady or some other tool, so that we can, again, get a better picture of what each child. This might not be the conversation for what that would look like, but I want us to always keep in mind that every child is different. Every child's needs are different. And what happens in the classroom is so incredibly complex for the planning of each lesson. And we have to equip our teachers with everything possible so that they can differentiate those lessons.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this? Kristen, I don't, okay. Mr. Meyer, since I've been on the board, I've had issues with the iReady. I see where we had great value in it over the distance learning, which changed my opinion, but what still does concern me is the amount of use of it. So that's, I'm going to be paying very close attention when you bring forward the uniform assessment calendar, and I believe that's coming in August. Is that correct?
I think so.
Okay. And then hopefully we'll be able to have plenty of input on that before it actually makes it to the board, and then we all vote on it. Or makes it to final draft. That is
All right, well,
all of for that item. Go ahead.
he's got
All
a
right.
bunch more.
Well, through the chair, I have,
Okay.
I got to go through I, so I'm not
Okay.
done. But that was the biggest one I think that
That's-
most people have comments about. Second is a similar product that we use at the high school level called Achieve 3000. It's a reading software that we use to support our students who are in our intensive reading classes. These are our students who are below grade level, and of course, we need to do everything and anything we can to ensure that they are able to meet those graduation requirements. These are the students that we really have to closely monitor their progress over those last couple of years. It's a product that's been used in the district for the last couple of years. And to Dr. Moore's earlier points about iReady, once again, we will be continuing to improve on our implementation to assure that this product is used appropriately.
Okay. Comments, questions, board members? No? Okay. Let's
All right.
move on.
Next, I am bringing forth a continuation of an approval with Career Source Research Coast lease agreement with the School District of Indian River. Career Source leases classroom space at Treasure Coast Technical College for their Youth Connections program. They've been doing this for a number of years, and it provides the opportunity to use that space for 2 employees to meet with their clients.
Okay.
Any questions there?
Board members? No? Great partnership, and thank you for continuing that relationship.
I did not get a chance to see that, but this is like we talked about last meeting. These are all things that I'm very proud of the district and excited to welcome back and get to see with my own eyes in 2021. The next item is D. Well, I have D. I don't know if you guys have letters there. This is the continuation of our agreement with Pelican Landing Assisted Living Facility. This is where our students in our Certified Nursing Assistant program go to get their clinical experience. As I think that you each know, they're required to get 40 hours of experience in order to sit for that CNA exam. We have a wonderful partnership with Pelican Landing Assisted Living Facility for them to go in and get that experience. Another program that has been in existence, and recommend continuation of that.
Absolutely. Okay.
All right, the next is a renewal agreement between the ACTS, not quite sure if that's colloquially referred to as ACTS, but maybe ACTS, Retirement Life Communities, reflects once again, the cooperative spirit between the school board and Treasure Coast Technical College and that retirement community so that students can get what they need. All right. The next, we move to our school readiness program. Students, our earliest learners, those that are ages 3 to 5, are able to receive services if they qualify. These are our students with disabilities. And we partner with a couple of different organizations to do that throughout the county, one of which is the Redlands Christians Migrant Association. They have been helping us provide those services to those students, and we recommend continuing the contract for them to provide those to our earliest learners for 2021. The next one is similar. It's a Head Start contract, but this one is with the Economic Opportunity Council of Indian River / Okeechobee counties, where that group makes sure that our students are able to receive the services where needed.
I have a comment.
Yes. Oh.
Mrs. Justice?
Thank you very much. I just want to say this particular contract is near and dear to my heart. We recognized that in the Gifford area, we were lacking some type of early learning opportunity for students, and I was lucky enough to be part a number of years ago trying to start some type of a preschool in that area. These type of partnerships where we can have Head Start come in and be able to have a trailer on our campus, a classroom, right, a modular unit, and to be able to have students coming to at Dodgertown, for example, coming to a Head Start classroom where they're getting a Head Start on that school campus, and we get to engage with parents in a very meaningful way on our school campus. Perhaps they have siblings that also go to that school. That is when those partnerships truly shine. So I look for an extended and expanded use of community partnership to really help those youngest learners, and I thank you for bringing this forward.
And through the chair, thank you. This is, you guys come from Department of Education's Just Read Florida office, and It really is fantastic that we have this opportunity for our earliest learners to get there and to receive the support they need. There's lots of data behind kindergarten readiness and third grade readiness and the impact it has long term. The fact that the district has been doing this is phenomenal, so thank you. Moving on to, back to one from Mrs. Shields at the Treasure Coast Technical College. This is where our extended day program is currently housed, and this is where we are approving the fee schedule. We're, even with the advent of, new requirements with social distancing and other potential costs, we're going to be able to offset those, and proud that the fee schedule remains the same to support our students and parents moving forward in 2021 for the after-school care.
Okay, just to be clear, it is housed currently in technical, but it is moving to innovation?
Correct, not to get ahead of a possible
Okay.
further item that will come at a later
Okay.
time, but yes, in order to get this item approved, it was done through
Still.
Ms. Shields, but there is a plan that I think Dr. Moore will be alluding to here shortly, about some restructuring and realignment of services and support.
Thank you.
Yep. And then finally, as the Treasure Coast Technical College is not under the same requirements for the number of instructional hours or the 180-day calendar for K-12 students, they do have a different calendar, and so we're bringing forth the calendar of days of when those classes will meet and when they will be off. And those are my items for this month. Happy to address any questions. I know I went kind of quick, but I don't think there's any questions after the end of any of those, so.
No, I think it's been very beneficial to have the review of all the items ahead of time. So it really helps us with being able to go through it with you personally and ask our questions. So I appreciate you taking the time with us ahead of time.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure, and I would say that, there weren't, a lot of these were renewals, a few questions here and there. I think that obviously I already want to make sure we get that right, and we will.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. The next item is a presentation regarding the amendment to the instructional calendar. This was an item that we proactively added to be discussed today and approved this evening. The intent behind the item was to be, once again, proactive in establishing a return to schedule plan. We were planning and continue to plan what we would call a unity week, knowing as we return to school, children have been away from school since March 13th, taking advantage of the opportunity, to bring them together in a sense of unity, while at the same time teaching the values, the behaviors that align to what unity is, while at the same time ensuring that we're addressing that social emotional need of coming back to a school system. So this would not be like a return to school over a summer, but since March 13th. So re-establishing those systems, those conditions, those behaviors, the feeling of safety, comfort, respect, and love within the confines of the school day. The intent is to modify the instructional calendar really to focus in on those systems, structures, behaviors, and attitudes over the course of the first 4 school days. A number of good conversations with the calendar committee. Once again, good conversations with our union. But as we step back and look at the reality, ladies and gentlemen, once again, the reality continues to shift. And there is a level of uncertainty regarding what the opening of schools would look like based on the reality. So we don't want to misinform our community, and we don't want to continue to have modification or changes. So we are going to pull the item for tonight, continuing to work through with the committee that we have, with principals on a return plan. As you know, a little bit off topic, but directly connected, we are having a town hall meeting, not a town hall, I'm sorry, a meeting this Friday, which is an opportunity for us to bring our community up to speed. This was information that I shared at our previous board meeting, in which we would allow the community the opportunity to see what a social distancing looked like within a school. We're going to be able to show that, as well as push out information regarding our virtual programming and the availability of virtual programming. So we'll be able to show the community, hey, these are the confines of what it would look like within a school day when your child returns home. The opportunity to physically see it, just not hear my words describing it, but to physically see it. We have captured some video to highlight some of those procedures and that we have in place, and also talk through, if you're not comfortable with what you've seen, provide us feedback. So it will be an additional opportunity to provide feedback from the community, and then also additional information regarding virtual school, the virtual school option. This will be an option, not to get ahead of myself, but excited about the opportunity. Our teachers teaching our students in that virtual reality, in that virtual program, log on when their time is available for you, receive feedback from our teachers, not a teachers from somewhere else across the nation, but our teachers. So we're looking to push that information to our community and then seek their feedback on possibly a third blended model, which we're still working with our teachers and staff regarding what that would look like, which would provide opportunities for students or families who are not comfortable yet based on the current spike that we're having. I appreciate the hard work the district is doing, but I'm just not there yet. An opportunity to continue to be enrolled in school, accessing your education, and then when that level of comfort is established for that family, they have the flexibility to come weave right back into the school system with little to no break within that reality. So a lot of work being done. We want to be respectful and speak in truth regarding this work. So I think the best thing to do is to continue to monitor the situation, provide the update on Friday. The big ask on Friday will be, once again, to seek input from the community regarding the reality in which we're currently at, and then an opportunity for us as a team to respond, to design an option that is flexible enough to ensure every single family in our community feels safe, feels comfortable, and has access to quality education in the school district of Indian River County. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. We have a couple of board members that would like to make a comment. Mrs. Justice?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your attention to this, Dr. Moore, and obviously returning back to school is going to be something that no one really knows what it looks like. But people would like to know that we are going to be returning back to school. So parents are unsure. Across the state, we have districts that are issuing information, videos, school schedules, possible things. So all of our parents are obviously watching those things. They're seeing those things. They're deciding, if that happens here, am I good with that or am I not good with that? I urge you as a parent and being on the word on the street, we need to start moving forward too, right? Because we may be in a situation where things are changing for the next year. So people are craving information, and they are nervous, and they want to start making plans for their future. Everyone feels that they've been in a holding pattern, I think, and people are excited about their children going back to school, either physically or remotely. But what I hear is from a lot of our parents, if remote learning looked like what it looked like at the end of the year, again at the beginning of the year, it's not something that they would want to participate in. And personally, for me, I would tend to agree. I think the idea of our teachers teaching virtual classes is exciting, and I thank you for that. Unity Week. I'd like to go back to the first thing you talked about. One of my biggest concerns, given what we're dealing with right now, and the Confederate flag, and having the meeting tonight and discussing some of the racial tensions across the country, I've reached out to some of the people that I've had the opportunity to work with over the past 4 years as a school board member, and it's a diverse group. And getting feedback from them, one of the concerns they see across the country is true division amongst our students, especially in middle school and high school. Not only have families been quarantined together, but we do have racial tensions across the country, and we do not know what is happening in homes across the country or what is being said. And I do have a fear as a parent, right or wrong, that in this time of polarized politics, and with the racial tension that we're dealing with, that our students are going to come back to school. There's a quote, a James Baldwin quote, and he says, children have never failed, children don't always listen to their elders, but they never fail to imitate them. And so there are groups around the country. John Hodge is a gentleman I spoke with. I've mentioned him to you before, Dr. Moore. He runs a group called ULLC, the Urban Leadership and Learning Center, and they did some work in some of our schools with equity and some of the racial issues we were dealing with, and looking at closing the achievement gap. The African American Achievement Committee had actually hired them to come in, and then they did a closer study with a number of schools. They did a study of schools, and then they worked with 4 schools in particular on some issues that they were having regarding equity. They are working on a program right now of how do we reintroduce students to classrooms, and my question to you, gentlemen, would be, beyond just our own staff, but looking at this from a national level, while we may not have everything that is happening across the country happening here, our students are citizens of the world. They are on social media. They are watching news. They see everything that's happening. So what plans do we have in that Implementation Unity Week to address some of the divisions that we may see amongst our students, and how are we going to help them beyond banning the Confederate flag or those things to have a broader conversation when school reopens again?
Through the chair, no one week is going to solve years of work that we have to do, decades of work that we have to do moving forward. But it is an opportunity, A, to acknowledge the reality, and B, to collectively work to unity. And I will say it later, unity sounds like a comfortable coming together word, but in front of unity is courage, strength, dignity, and you cannot get to unity until you're able to deal within those particular areas. So it is a walk that we have to take together. I think we have been extremely intentional upon my arrival to acknowledge the reality and to design plans, whether it be the African American Achievement Plan, and then embedding our district strategic plan to the African American Achievement Plan. What we are doing over the summer in Reignite is an opportunity really to look at that reality. I've said it once and I'll continue to say it. Teaching is secondary to the environments and cultures which are within schools. One of the things that we will tell our administrators and staffs, when you talk about school culture, it's not programming you provide to children, it's the interaction and relationships of the adults. Adults define school culture. And we as a community need to have systems and structures in place within our schools in order to continually grow an environment in which all children feel safe, feel comfortable, feel safe, I'll say it twice, loved as they enter a school building. And then and only then can we produce academic outcomes that ensure children can spend a lifetime fulfilling their potential. In addition to Unity Week, which is the opportunity to onboard students to this expectation and to this environment, prior to that, July 24th, we will be having a Day of Equity in which Dr. Long is planning. And this is an opportunity from a community perspective. Our district leaders, our district principals, community leaders coming together for a day in which we'll have the opportunity to listen to stories, both past and present, students who are in our schools and students who were in our schools. Participate in workshops together as a community as it relates to bias, as it relates to injustice, and then spend the afternoon as a leadership team, school site leadership teams, really coming together to say, based on what we have learned today, what shifts in practice do we have to address? What barriers or obstacles are in place for us that we need to address? And then we will continue to support and guide that work for the next several years. And I've always said, as you said earlier, it's about implementation. This too is about expectation and implementation. And if we are to move the needle forward in terms of these environments in our schools, we need to be intentional. We need to evaluate the reality. I think some of the data points that we are now collecting as a result of the African American Achievement Plan were not data points that we were collecting in previous years. but now it includes an additional layer of understanding regarding things that where we need to, as adults, put our focus. So it is an ongoing, continuous effort as we grow a reality in our schools that ensure that we can move forward in a sense of unity and acceptance.
Thank you for that. Mrs. Berenborg?
Yes, thank you. I was able to attend the meeting that Mr. Meyer had with the team that was discussing the schedule and the calendar. And a lot of those members that were on the calendar committee joined in as well, and also union reps. And I wanted to first of all thank you for doing that, because I think they appreciated the fact that they were able to give input, giving our employees a chance to give input. I'm not sure how much our parents have been able to give input, although I have gotten some input from parents as well. And of course, you're going to hear from those that are vocal. We want to do what's best for most, if not all. But I think that not everybody's going to like the end result, no matter what we choose. So I think we need to choose what's best for most, if not all. I think that it's a good idea that right now that you're pulling back a little. But I also think it's time that we need to get something out there so that people understand what's going to happen, and then they can choose to go virtual or go to a brick and mortar school. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Berenborg. I believe he mentioned that Friday he's going to get that out there, so thank you.
No, I know that. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that, because I know that people have been eagerly awaiting when that's going to come out.
Okay. Mrs. Rosario?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mrs. Berenborg was coming in and out, so it was hard for me to hear everything that she was talking about, but I did hear that not everybody is going to be happy, and we should do what is best for most, if not all. I'm not sure, just clarification. This wasn't my original question, but just clarification, was what she was talking about the reopening of schools and the options that we're going to put out, or were we still on the equity discussion, the equity conference?
I'll answer that. It was the topic that we were discussing, which is the opening of school and the schedule changes in the calendar.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I just wasn't sure because you were coming in and out. I am the Unity Week, Dr. Moore, that is intended to be the very first week, correct? That students return?
Through the chair, yes.
And so can you just, I know that you're going to get into detail later on, but can you just share, later on on Friday and possibly in future meetings, can you share a little bit about how Unity Week will look, what it would look like for students who would not be present? Are there going to be virtual opportunities for whatever kids are going to do in schools on that? Or are we still not there yet? Are we talking about it?
Through the chair, we are in the development phases. I think Friday, what we're acknowledging is the opportunity to enroll in virtual school. Virtual school will be taught by our students, but true virtual in the sense that I choose the time and schedule for, in collaboration with my parents, versus a regular return, which is very specific programming around the return to school and the coming together in this new reality.
Okay. And the equity conference on July 24th, unfortunately, I'm out of town that weekend, and I leave on the 23rd, so I'm not going to be able to be present at that, unfortunately. But I just wanted to acknowledge the work that's been going into this. It's my understanding that the equity conference was in plan for quite a while. Am I correct on that?
Through the chair, we initially were planning the very similar event prior to COVID-19. which obviously was canceled, and then we were able to get back on the books for the date in which we're now discussing.
I'm very happy to hear that. I mean, I knew that it was in the planning stage and that there were discussions around it, not knowing that the climate of today's racial tensions would be so high. But it comes at a good time, I believe, to begin opening up the school year with an equity conference gives an opportunity for voices to be heard, gives an opportunity for the community to see that the school district is not remaining dormant to a certain extent, and that the African American Achievement Plan is not just, bulleted points that were placed on a paper, that we do want to make it, a living document, which is something that we've talked about on many occasions. So I wanted to thank you and Dr. Long, who is coordinating all of the efforts for this conference, and in advance now just acknowledge that unfortunately I won't be there. I'd love to be able to do a video of some sort, thanking everybody or make a statement, but I'm excited to hear what comes of it. I'm excited to know that even under these circumstances that we are trying to unite as we continue moving forward stronger together. Maybe our motto should be united in strength together, or something like that.
Not this time, no.
Okay. Oh, Mrs. Justice?
Yes, will we be addressing school start time?
Through the chair, that we, well, not for the opening of this particular school, but it is a topic of conversation as we move into next year. We're going to go through that full year. So we've collected data on that as a result of COVID-19 and the amount of change in which we're having. We will go through a series as we move throughout next school year regarding school start times. My opinion or feelings regarding school start times has not changed. I think there's significant work we need to be doing here in reading and understanding the data, the research, and ensure that we're having school schedules that are best for children and not bus routes.
Thank you.
Okay. All the comment on that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Outstanding. Now I'd ask for Mr. Fagan, our Chief Financial Officer, to take the hot seat. Presentation amendments to, I'm sorry, that's not it. Presentation of recurring critical district-wide expenditures requirements for 2021.
Oops, sorry, that was me. Just making sure you're paying attention.
Mr. Fagan, you're clear for takeoff.
To the chair, thank you, Sue. Good afternoon, board members. I have one item for today and tonight. It is an item for approved reoccurring district-wide expenditures for 2021. In order to plan for the 2021 school year, the district is requesting the board approve the issuance of purchase orders and the amount listed on the attached list. These items are what we call reoccurring, pretty much critical items that will assist us during the school year next year. They are also above $50,000, which is why we're taking the item to the board. It is above the superintendent's limit. However, all these items are covered and are being brought to the board because they can be secured in one of three ways. One, it is through Administrative Rule 6A, where we can direct negotiate, which would be like for the insurance. We direct negotiate with Scrimp for the coverages there. Or two, it is on a state, local, or county bid already, and we're basically going to piggyback on that contract. So all of these contracts fall in that category. Most of these, we're basically piggybacking on a contract that already exists. Okay. So another county or another entity has already done the work for us. They recently bid, got the lowest bid, and we're going to piggyback on them.
Okay. Mrs. Barenborg has a question.
Yes, actually I have two. First one, Scrimp. So I know you said that's negotiated. Is that close to the same number as the prior year?
Yes, ma'am, last year we actually spent $3.7 million. This year the budget is approximately $4 million. It was about a slight increase in a couple of the insurance premiums.
Is that due to the usage of it, or is that just normal?
Through the chair, industry standard and also our usage. Remember, it's just like with your car insurance and your house insurance. The more we have claims, the higher it goes up. So some of our policies, we have a little bit higher claims.
That's what I was worried about. Okay. The other one is the IB program. I see it's 84,000 up to 100,000 for authority. I know that if students pass in certain courses and there is a reimbursement of some sort to come back to the school, does that help go back to pay for this? Because IB only affects a certain number of students, so that's what I wanted to find out.
I'll have to get back and check with you on that one. I do not know off the top of my head.
Okay, I wasn't able to ask you that question when we talked before, so thank you.
Okay.
Mrs. Justice?
Yes, thank you very much. So when I'm looking at this and I look at the amount of money that's been expended year to date due to coronavirus and school ending early, I would imagine that some of the money that we've spent in this past calendar year has been changed, like food services, for example, the bakery.
Yes,
We haven't bought as much bread because students haven't been in school. Is that correct?
that's correct.
So it's been really interesting watching budgeting processes here at the county and also even like with CSAC money going out, because groups are being funded for programs that may or may not exist going forward, right? And so it's interesting to see, and even though they put in for reimbursement, it's interesting to see. So this money that you save, right? If it's not going back to specific allocations, where will there be some type of, I'm curious to know how much money we've actually saved since March 13th because school hasn't been open, and then what the intended use of those funds are.
Let me answer the first question first. The amount you see for Flowers Bakery, 52 to 400,000. Remember, the plan is to open schools next year and be fully operational. So this is assuming
We budget for the full,
full
right?
amount. This is a maximum. Can't go above this amount, but I can spend any dollar amount less. As far as how much money we've saved because of the virus, you got to remember we've been paying people accordingly. So I may have the same amount of revenue, but I also currently have the same amount of expenditures, except maybe in transportation. I'm not burning the fuel, not burning the maintenance, and a few other items. But your overall fixed costs have not changed significantly.
Well, how much did we budget for bread last year?
But I have to go back and find the budget. We spent 52. I'm assuming we budgeted, I have to check the food service budget, probably $200,000 to $300,000 easy.
Because we have 400, are we expecting the price of bread to go up a lot, or?
That I cannot tell you right off the top of my head, but keep in mind, this is a maximum amount. So
I
we're just getting.
understand.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I understand. But, much like my concern about having additional money sitting in safe harbor, budgeting for things like bread being $100,000 over what, I'm just saying.
Okay. Let me clarify.
Yeah, please do, because maybe
This
I'm
is not-
misunderstanding.
This is not a budget.
I
This is an
understand.
authorization level.
I
So if we
understand.
only need $100,000 of bread next year, that's what you'll see in the budget.
Why are you asking for, I'm sorry, Dr. Moore, may I ask you, I apologize. Why would you be asking for $400,000, an authorization of $400,000 on a bread order for 52? I'm just trying to understand why that authorization is being asked for in that amount.
I'll have to defer to Mr. Fagan on that one.
Through the chair, I will have to go back to the food service budget and specifically ask them why they have an amount three times as much as what they spent last year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious, I'm curious as to why that authorization would be asked for.
Okay. Mrs. Rosario? You're on mute.
Hold on.
There
Hold
you
on.
are.
Nope,
Okay.
no, we got you.
All right. I would like to ask Dr. Moore, would you be able to pull this particular item so that Mr. Fagan can actually look at these in depth? Because there are several other lines that are questionable as well, not just the bakery, in terms of what's being requested and what's, what was expended. The bread is not something, I don't expect that, as Mr. Fagan said, I mean, and this is just my layman's thought on this. We have still provided food. We still provided breakfast, lunch, and in some cases dinner during, the COVID crisis. So food is not something that I imagine that we've saved money on. I want to think that I hope that we've actually spent more on food during this time. That's just my personal opinion on that. But there are still some other items here that, M&B products, 165,000, and then, being requested is up to 300,000. It's quite a lot, a big difference. Mobile modular, 241,000, and then what's being requested is 400,000. It just seems so high. United Data Technologies, 538,000 was expended, but it's being requested $900,000 for this. It just doesn't seem equitable. So if this is something that we could pull and not bring to us tonight for approval, so Mr. Fagan can take a look at it more, I would appreciate that.
Through the chair, so I'll ask Mr. Fagan to provide the responses in a typical budget. That allows us to operate and run the district given a emergency, since the authority is given, which really is the intent of the item. My initial response to what you're saying is our next board meeting is not until July, late July, and we have to be prepared for the opening of schools. So not approving the item would have significant impact on our ability to be flexible, as flexible as we need to be in terms of running and operating the district. But Mr. Fagan will get that information and circle back prior to tonight's meeting.
Well, I'm sorry, he's going to get the information?
Yep.
I just don't feel comfortable. I mean, I don't see how pulling this until our next meeting is going to delay, how many of these things are we actually going to? I may be missing something in terms of the calendar and the timing, but I can't believe that we're going to put the district back, significantly if we pull this until our next meeting or call a special meeting. I mean, these are pretty high numbers.
Right. May I comment?
No, it's Mrs. Berenberg and then. Go ahead. Mrs. Berenberg, do you have a comment to this?
Yeah, I for some reason didn't get to see this before. I'm not sure why, because I looked up all the different attachments, so I'm not sure why I missed this one. But I agree that there are some things that, I understand what Dr. Moore's asking for. He's asking for the ability to start purchasing if we need it, and then move up to that certain amount. Like, for example, train. I have questions about 591,000 versus 3 million. So before we maybe not pull it, so I understand why you don't want it pulled, how about we cap it a little bit right now and then get our answers, and then you bring it back for the other amounts that you want, just so that you can get some of this stuff ordered that I know you have to order, like Fred, before start of school.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
We'll circle back around. Mrs. Justice?
So my comment in bringing this up today wasn't that I'm concerned that Dr. Moore is going to go on a spending spree of bread. But just that, authorization for spending is important. This is not our money, and there's a saying that says the easiest thing to spend is somebody else's money. And so we have to be really mindful of that. In giving authorization as school board members for spending, I watch those things. I want to make sure that we are giving a proper authorization, because if you did go on a bread spending spree, it would be our responsibility, because we had allowed you to have that authorization. So in doing our due diligence as board members, that's why we bring it up. And I think that it's a learning process with you as we go through this. So, everybody brings their baggage. We might have a little baggage with some authorization issues in the past. I think other districts in general have dealt with those things. I apologize for you to have to deal with that, but I do think anytime you're asking for increased authorization for any type of spending, that it needs to be in line with the spending that we currently have, or it needs to be justified as to, we feel like we're going to have to spend a lot more money on bread because, people used to not eat carbs and now they are. Do you see what I'm saying? I know I'm making light of it with bread, but you understand where I'm going with it.
Through the chair, if I can make a suggestion. Approve the item as of tonight, and I will get all the answers to you before we spend any money and before the budget's approved in July.
Okay,
That way, if I do have an emergency, lightning strikes and blows out a chiller at a school, and I don't have the authority to buy it on July 2nd, then there's no AC at the school. If an emergency occurs, that would be the only reason to spend the money.
If that's the way that Dr. Moore wants to handle it, I'd be fine handling that as long as we address it again going forward.
Through the chair, we'll provide a detailed explanation as to the rationale as it relates to expenditure versus authority prior to tonight's board meeting. If there's any board members who would like to pull the item and move it to action to discuss further, if that, for any additional answers or questions they may have, that way we have the opportunity to be nimble enough to respond to the board items that are being asked to be approved. So I'll bring that feedback prior to this evening's meeting, and we'll have the opportunity to discuss and bring a level of comfort and clarity to each board member's concerns prior to tonight. Ms. Rosara, I think my team can get this work done and address the concerns you have prior to tonight's meeting.
Dr. Schiff, and then I have a comment to your suggestion. So, Dr. Schiff?
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
So a couple things. One, this says that it's expended through May 25th, 2019. Is that because, and the numbers are dramatically different in what was spent up until that time and what's being requested for next year in pretty much every category. So I'm wondering two things. One, is it because invoices don't come in and are not paid until after that date? So is it possible that there's something we're missing here in what's actually spent that occurs after May 25th, even though that's after the formal close of the school year, but not at the end of the budget year? So that's question one. Because as my fellow board members have pointed out, the numbers are remarkably different. Number two, moving forward for tonight, is it possible, so that we can get started for next year, if it's true that the total amount expended last year was the 10.6 million, can we approve for that amount consistent with last year? And if we get documentation that we understand the justification for the dramatically increased amounts, we can approve those if need be in July, so that we don't stop what needs to go forward for this year, but we're not approving an additional $7 million that we don't understand what we're approving it for.
Through the chair, I think once we provide that explanation, then we'll be able to create that answer. So.
Okay.
But my first part of that question was, if that doesn't occur, I don't think any of us are objecting to approving consistent with previous expenses. What we're unclear about is the dramatic increase. So I think I hear my fellow board members saying that they're okay going forward with numbers consistent to the past. What I'm not clear about is why can we not break this up into two different events where we approve the one thing tonight, which then doesn't have Mr. Fagan having to rush around in 2 hours to get answers that may be incomplete under the pressure of making a decision, and we give him some time to do that comprehensively, but still allow the district to move forward in the units that need to start their ordering process for next year.
Through the chair. In response to your first question, yes, this was as of May 25th, and there will be some more invoices that will be paid, but I wouldn't expect the train invoice to go from, the expenditures to go from 591 to a couple million, because we didn't have that many expenditures. The one thing I would like to reiterate is these are actual expenditures that were incurred year to date. Maybe what might be helpful is the amount that was approved last year, so you can use it as a comparison as to what was done, even though maybe the same questions were asked last year. But keep in mind that some of these items, such as train, are for emergency items or items that might be on the 5-year plan. There may not be $3 million worth of chiller work. There only may be $1 million. Maybe we're replacing 2 of them. But if a storm comes through and we have to fix 3 more, now you might be above that limit, and we're going to have to do some shifting on the 5-year plan to cover that expenditure. So once again, these are not budgeting amounts. They're authorization to spend in case the district needs to.
Okay,
Can I follow up with that?
yes.
Sorry, I didn't have time to write comment. Is this money, if this money were to be approved at the higher rate and we didn't spend it, is that money that can be moved into other places where we might want to spend it, or having been allocated to this area, are we then obligated through the end of the year for any reason to keep it in this allocation?
Through the chair, no. If the funds are not spent, they will roll back to the original source, such as capital money back to capital, general fund back to general.
Federal fund back to federal.
Federal fund back. Food service back to food service. If you don't spend it on bread, it rolls into the food service fund balance.
Okay,
So, sorry again, but one of the things I see that is that if we're allocating, again, this will be resolved when we better understand also what happened last year, but if numbers were approved this much higher last year than was expended, that's also then something, then there's a pattern here that we might want to address. But if we are approving things at so much a higher rate than is typically spent, I'm wondering why we do that. Why do we approve things in some cases at anywhere from 50% more to 2 and 3 times as much more as gets expended? And as my fellow board members have brought up, I'm unclear if this is a one-time thing, is something different this year, has this been typical in the past? And I completely understand your explanation that there are certain expenses for which we want to be prepared in case of emergency. But to follow up on Mrs. Justice's concern, I'm not sure that bread is one of them. And some others that appear less likely to fall into that category. So, yeah, this is confusing.
okay. I do have 4 comments to this. Before Dr. Schiff had suggested it, I'm at the point that tonight I feel comfortable approving what we've expended through May 25th. I feel comfortable approving that number tonight. I do not see it harming us to approve that number and you bringing back the information to us so that we can approve the additional amounts on the July meeting. I don't want us to get into the habit of rushing a decision. I understand that Dr. Moore wants to have this information to us here in a little bit, but I do need time to look through it, and I don't want to have to rush through that. But I think if we break it up into two portions, that we could make sure that we're not going to hinder the district to move forward with our new year. So, and another comment I would like to make on this is I don't feel comfortable bringing back what we had budgeted last year if we're really trying to scrub our budget, because if the numbers last year, we really need to understand why did we have those numbers. And I don't just want to do it because it was the numbers from last year. And that's my opinion on it. And then we have more opinions and comments from Mrs. Berenborg, and then who's after Mrs. Berenborg? Mrs. Rosario.
Yes, I was going to suggest the same thing that Dr. Schiff brought up. I feel like I need to pull this item tonight because I don't feel prepared in knowing what I'm voting for as far as numbers. I have been a principal where the chiller went out and we had to purchase a new one very quickly. So I understand train and the fact that you need a lot of money. However, I think that I'd be comfortable with approving at least enough that you could get through with some emergencies. until we get to the bottom line of what we need to spend. I think, Dr. Moore, you're learning from this conversation that in the past there have been some purchases that have been maybe not, the board hasn't been totally aware of why they were put out there. So I think educating us more on why you need this money, I think it'd be really important. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Rosario?
I wanted to ask Mr. Fagan, Mrs. Zork, you mentioned something just now that I'm not sure if I heard you clearly, but I'm going to ask Mr. Fagan. I think, Laura, I think we're on the same page here. Mr. Fagan, when you bring back the explanation for the differences, can you also bring back the prior year's request? Like I know Dr. Schiff mentioned it, she touched on it a bit, and I'm not suggesting that we automatically approve what was approved last year. I just want to look at it from my understanding as a learning opportunity, so that we can also kind of identify those, like why is this year, why are we asking for something greater than we did last year, or less than, the fire and security line item there is significantly less. I think that's the only one that I could see that was less in fire and security. So it's just very curious to me. But if you can bring that back, if you can find it, I don't know if you were here at the time. I'm not even sure if I recall seeing this last year, but we probably did. I just don't recall it, and I do not recall us having this much conversation about it. So it definitely would be helpful for me to look at that side by side, to kind of do the crosswalk of it, and then I'd be able to better wrap my head around what questions to ask. But that would be helpful for me. I still stand behind not voting on this tonight, but definitely giving an opportunity for Mr. Fagan, a greater opportunity for Mr. Fagan to look into it and not rush for sure. And I do not want us to hinder the district in, opening up for the school year at all. So I would be okay. I mean, Terry mentioned a capping. Mrs. Berenberg mentioned a capping. Capping it at what it is right now is certainly an opportunity to allow us to open up appropriately. So I'm good with that. I just want to be able to see them side by side last year and this year. So thank you for that.
Thank you, board members. We will review the item and provide information as needed.
Oh, we had one
I have a comment,
final
I'm sorry.
comment.
Excuse me, Dr. Moore, may I? So I'm the one who brought this up, so I would like to just say something right now. So I brought this up, I had questions about it. I had not seen it before, but to be honest, when I was a first-year board member looking at this from where I am now is very different. I'm able to look at this in a very different way. So I will just say to anyone, there's a big learning curve, and you do come to understand or see patterns and things. The concern to me right at this moment is that we just told our superintendent we had concerns, and his answer back to us was, I'll get you that information before the meeting tonight because I want it on the agenda for tonight. And then I heard board members, and I'm going to say this because I want us to work together as a group, I heard board members say, well, we're going to feel rushed and all of that. Well, that's fine. You have a superintendent that told you he wanted to bring the item tonight and he was going to bring information and backup. I'm sorry if Mr. Fagan will have to work very, very hard, but if that's what Dr. Moore wants him to go do, that's Dr. Moore's right. My opinion is if he wants it on the agenda tonight, he should put it on the agenda tonight. And then if you don't feel comfortable, like you have the right information, then it is your choice to not vote on it going forward if you're not comfortable. The reason I state this is this. I do not want to micromanage Dr. Moore and his team's work. And I feel just for me as a board member, it is not my place to tell him what to do with his staff or with this item right now at this moment. If it comes forward tonight and I'm not comfortable, I won't vote on it. So I just want to make that statement because I'm concerned If Dr. Moore feels confident that he can do something, he has certainly shown that when he feels confident, we should trust that.
Okay, Dr. Schiff.
Yeah, I want to respond to that for a minute. Our job as a board is to work collaboratively and responsibly with the superintendent and for the citizens. And for the most part, I think we all do a very good job of that. We've acknowledged before that and appreciated Dr. Moore bringing us items before we get into the meeting, which is a departure from the past. But I would argue this is our job. And this is our job to have these conversations in the public, whether or not we've had them privately. And that if we're not comfortable with something, it's our job to be the guardian of that. If Dr. Moore would like it to go to a different way, that's great. But our job is to work together as a governance team and to express our concerns to and with one another. And I think that's what we're doing here. And I think we all have a responsibility to do it. And I frankly think Dr. Moore is quite capable of working with us on this issue and others, and is not taking any of this conversation personally or as an affront to his leadership.
Amen.
Okay, Dr. Moore.
No, I appreciate the feedback. Mr. Fagan will do a little bit more research. Obviously, my goal, both in preparation for these meetings and public meetings, is to give a complete level of clarity to all board members so you fully understand what is put in front of you to vote. And in this scenario, we fell short because there are questions that should have been answered prior to this meeting, because these are conversations that we should be having in the public in which every board member has a deep understanding regarding what that reality is. And unfortunately, my team and I fell short, and we're going to rectify that prior to tonight. And if we don't get it rectified prior to tonight, then, as Dr. Schiff said, we will work collectively together as a governing board and superintendent to determine what are the best steps to move forward as a system and as a district to accomplish all things that need to be accomplished, to have a smooth opening of school and have the flexibility to respond to emergencies as emergencies, unfortunately happen. So I think as we provide that information, there'll be a higher level of clarity to have a deeper conversation regarding what the reality is and what the ask is. So I'm confident we will get this done for our board.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fagan. What's that?
I was waiting for you, but I guess it's my
I'm
turn.
sorry.
I'm sorry. It is, Madam Chair, it is the next item, which is the salary book. I will kick off this presentation, then turn it over to Mr. Bass for anything that I may have left off. This is an item that initially was proffered to come to the board meeting before last in review of the item, and in speaking with board members, there was an opportunity really to align our walk and our talk. And the review of the book, there were a number of inconsistencies, there was a number of inequities, there was a number of confusions. So in looking at the book, there was the opportunity to pull the item and to ensure that the book itself is transparent and everyone has a clear understanding of what salary schedules individuals were on. There were opportunities to ensure that we were being equitable across all employees, ensuring that certain units of employees would receive a raise without the board's acknowledgement, without the superintendent's acknowledgement, by modifying the salary schedule from not steps, but ranges to a overall range. So rather than having 1 to 5 years certain paycheck and then increasing from 6 through 9 and then 11 beginner, intermediate, and expert, there was an opportunity to establish a range There was inconsistency where there were market adjustments, which certain job positions received that market adjustment versus modifying the actual overall range. We were able to clear up that inequity. There were opportunities to clearly define within the book how an individual will be compensated upon arrival to the district, a percent raise in which individuals would receive coming into the district or going down in the district through a other position identified by the district for employees, or an individual selecting their own position. It ensures that when you look at the book, everyone understands. We spoke a lot and continue to speak around transparency. These modifications to the handbook ensures that we are in fact being transparent. It's important to note, as we discuss these changes, this has no impact on current employees' salaries. So as we looked at creating the ranges, we did so in a manner that ensured that employees who were within the range or slightly above the range were not impacted, but ultimately moving forward ensures that we adhere to those particular ranges, in that when an employee receives a raise or additional compensation, that item is recommended by me and approved by the board. The previous salary handbook, that was not the scenario. And that created a sense of tension across different bargaining, not necessarily bargaining units, but different groups of employees. This levels the playing field, ensures that we're being completely upfront and honest regarding how individuals are paid when they receive a promotion. So we are happy to do this work. Began the statement by saying this was work initially that I thought I would be able to dig into next year. But if we are to be transparent, if we're to speak about equity at all times, this book, as it was written previous, didn't reflect those thoughts in those words. So we took it down, did the hard work of bringing it to a place in which we can be proud of, you as a board can be proud of. So we're presenting this item to you today. Mr. Bass, there are probably a few things I didn't mention.
Dr. Moore, you did pretty good. Through the chair, one thing that I just wanted to point out, what this does do, coming from a district who functions similar or like what we're proposing, it gives an opportunity for cost control, and it also gives an opportunity for oversight. You know, when all salary increases come through you for approval based upon the fiscal condition as to what we're in the district, that is a very important opportunity for cost control. And at the point in time that it was, we really did not have that here. So that is, to me, that is the biggest win of this proposal.
Okay. Dr. Schiff?
Yeah, thank you. First off, I want to acknowledge all of the work that went into this. I know that both of you and everyone else is involved has been at this for weeks and weeks and weeks. And the reason that you've been at it for weeks and weeks and weeks is because it's been a glaring hole in the past. And the lack of, in not just this area, but in a variety of areas, the lack of very clear policy, procedure, and structure has not been as attended to as completely as it should have, and without setting that infrastructure up first, it hinders your ability to move forward and do the work you need to do in the district. What happened?
I just confused where I should be looking at you to give you my
Oh,
attention.
God, I don't really care, because from where I am, it never looks like you're looking at me, so it doesn't matter. Actually, that's a little better, but that's
There
okay.
it is. I'm just looking at a little stick.
But, you know, it sort of looked like, you know, you got pinched or something there for a minute. Anyway, the point of all of this, we digress. The point of all of this is that, while you alluded to it, I want to make very, very clear publicly, and have you both make very, very clear publicly, that no one in a current position is in any way losing salary or losing money. And if they are being shifted from one position to another, that would in the future start at a different rate. If they have been in a position, for example, if they have been an assistant principal at a middle school and they are moving to an elementary school, that their current salary will not change, and that the new salary schedule allows for the range that doesn't harm anyone in their current role and allows for, what's the word I want? Allows for modification,
Fluidity?
structure. I'm sorry, what, Terry?
It's more fluid.
It allows for fluidity moving forward so that this structure not only doesn't harm anybody, but creates considerably more equivalency moving forward, and that no one's salary will be directly harmed or diminished as a result of this new schedule.
Through the chair, that is correct. When you apply the schedule to the positions for this particular school year, there is no impact. What the salary schedule does do provides a pathway or an incentive for an advancement. Under the old schedule, moving from a principal to a coordinator or a director, there was no incentive because the way the schedule, it was reapplied, and then you ultimately would lose money for more responsibility. This is very straightforward, in which as you move up the ranks, you receive a 5% increase or move to the low range of the new position in which you are in, dependent upon where you fall, whatever benefits you more. Now, it sets the pathway for moving forward as well. For individuals who are being placed down a position within the administrative ranks, it is if you're within the salary range, therefore you remain the same. And that becomes a big ordeal when you look at assistant principal positions as an example. Assistant principal, in this league, there are individuals who are pursuing the principalship and are in secondary schools and want the experience to move to an elementary school purely to prepare themselves to be a principal, which is fine. And because their salary at the middle school scale slides into the elementary level, there's no change or no devaluing of that particular employee. Now, if there is an employee who's above the salary range and they are going into a new administrative position, and the top of that scale exceeds their salary, they would be a 5% deduction. So those are the two realities that clearly defines what it would be. And we thought it was the right work to do because it clearly allows anyone, external or internal, to look at the salary book and have a clear understanding. Okay, if I move to this county, this is where I'll be placed on the scale based on the approved salary book.
Did you have follow-up?
And one more thing just to add, if an administrator goes to a lesser position or is reassigned to a lesser position, obviously this will be a bigger financial hit to them. They will be moved at a 10% decrease of their salary for the first 12 months, and then they will fit into the range of the job that they are moving to. The thought there would be there may be something else that opens up in the district that they could apply for and move into within this 12 months, which was the hope. But again, trying to pay similar salaries for similar work.
Okay. All right. Mrs. Barrenborg?
Yes, I wanted to say thank you to you and your staff for cleaning this up. It needed to be. I support it. I think it's a great change. And also, I'd like to say to Dr. Moore, thank you for answering the questions for not only me, that I had several questions on this, but also for those employees that thought that their salary was going to be affected. And I appreciate you taking the time to individually reach out to anybody that emails you or calls you on that. So thank you.
Absolutely, and that is a return phone call, not an email. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Rosario?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I talked with Dr. Moore about this in depth on so many occasions, and I'm very happy of the work that went into this with Mr. Bass, and anyone else who's involved in the discussions around this. We're still not, I think there are still other areas in the salary schedule that need to be changed, that need to be addressed. And I'm looking forward to those conversations moving forward, because I still see a little bit of inequities in certain areas. But overall, what I'm pleased with here. Let me just begin with asking Dr. Moore a question. During the reviews and the edits of this, Dr. Moore, when you were asked to review certain areas in particular, overall, what were your initial thoughts when you began to see the inequities?
Through the chair, it deepened my understanding on some of the morale issues that we may have in administrative ranks. I've been an administrator for a number of years, and I have not received a additional compensation where other individuals, just based on moving from 1 year of service to the next year of service, received a significant raise. And it's not to say that that individual isn't deserving absolutely quality staff, but the flip side is others are feeling, well, I'm not being acknowledged financially for the hard work and contributions that I'm making. Another issue in which we have to address is looking at compensation for each and every single position, ensuring that we are aligned. I think the job descriptions are written as they are and aligned to the salary handbook. The salary handbook has been modified in one particular way, which brings fairness and equity across the system. And as we begin to problem solve, we will work with our unions in collaboration, as well as other employees regarding job descriptions, ensuring that salary is aligned to the responsibilities in which individuals are being charged to fulfill.
Okay.
So with that understanding, I'm glad that I asked that question, because I don't know if the public understands the thought process behind this, and I don't know if the public truly understands that there were real great issues with the previous salary schedule. So that's why I asked for you to explain that, especially with your experience, and why certain changes were made. But overall, as we build the capacity in our people, and as we pay them what they are worth in terms of the work that they are doing across the board, now there is much more equity, there's fairness, especially for those new people coming in. There isn't a question of new hires, rather. There isn't a question at this point as to where will I begin, what will my salary be, and then if they have the proper experience, where they fall in that range. So I'm glad that we actually clarified what that range meant, because anyone looking at some of these ranges may think that they could choose, or that they could negotiate what that range would be. And that's not the case. Even with the range differences, there is equity even in that. I have a couple of questions with the calendars at the back of this. This has already been changed, edited 4 times. But when the new instructional calendar comes out, the one that was just removed from tonight's meeting, when the new one comes, or whenever it is that we are discussing, I'm not sure what it was that we were removing from tonight, or that was removed from tonight's schedule. Would that affect the calendars in the back of this schedule book?
Through the chair, the direct answer is no, that would just be a modification of the instructional time in which students would be in school.
Okay.
But to that point, there are way too many calendars in this book. There should be 3, 10, 11, and 12-month employees. It is so confusing to understand. We have individuals coming to work where their supervisors are off. It is an opportunity really to partnership with our employees to clearly define and reduce the number of calendars that we have. It is very confusing.
I don't see why we just don't do it now, but maybe we just didn't have enough time. But
Well,
I agree with
negotiations,
you on that.
some would have to be negotiated based on, the defined number of days in which they're contracted to work.
Okay, there's one thing, though, that Mr. Bass just mentioned that is very new to me. Of all these weeks, or even, I don't know if it's been a month already, that we've been talking about this, the one thing Mr. Bass mentioned right now is that if somebody is changed to a lesser position, that they remain in their current salary for 12 months.
Through the chair, when you're going, that only applies when you're going from an administrative position to a pro-tech or other position outside of administration. And as we looked at the schedule within itself, it would be rare for that to happen, but when it does happen, there would be a possibility, dependent upon the new position in which you went into, that rate of reduction would be significant. So as we looked at that, and to be fair and best by the employees, we wanted to provide a safeguard for those employees for that 1-year period. So very typical to what other systems would do when you're being placed now outside of your, the administrative positions in this scenario and placed in a non-administrative position. That would be something that we would proffer in order to offset the impact on the employee and provide that year of time, find another position, or make the appropriate adjustments regarding your spending habits.
So here's what, I don't find that fair at all. I mean, maybe to that particular person who's moving positions, but overall, we're not doing the same thing for everybody who's changing from a position that's paying less. And then, so therefore, we're still back with the inequity. It's not fair for all. It's only fair for the person who's going from an administrator to a pro-tech. That's not fair. And when we're looking at this cost savings that you sent out, which the cost savings for the reorganization is a little over $1 million in total, then that means that it's really not $1 million because you have people that are still going to remain on their same salary for a whole year, and they're doing less work in a lesser position. I just don't see the equity there. And I don't see where that's written. I didn't read that anywhere, so I'm very confused right now.
Through the chair, we can identify the page that it's on. Maybe I can do a better job of explaining it. It is a 10% reduction in that one particular position, and it is to offset the rate of loss in which other employees are not experiencing. So in order to keep it fair, that is a provision in which we added versus, everyone else only loses within the range or 5%. Because I'm going from administrative to pro-tech, now I'm losing a significant amount. It is a 10% reduction, and then allows you the opportunity to adjust over the course of that particular year.
10% reduction is not what Mr. Bass said. Mr. Bass said they stay in their salary for 12 months.
No, through the chair, it is a 10% reduction, up to a 10% reduction if you're not within that particular range for a year. It's on page 40.
That's the conversation that I recall having with you, but Mr. Bass threw me off completely just now.
Do you want to clarify
chair.
that?
Through the chair, Ms. Rosario, I thought I said it, but I apologize if I did not. But it is a 10% reduction for this 12-month period, and then they will fit into the salary range where they fall per the job.
Okay.
All right. Does that conclude your questions, Mrs. Rosario?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to Dr. Moore. I've seen over my 3 years being here that leadership went out for consultants to do this type of work, and I think we're seeing the works of a consultant that had come in and made these recommendations, and I'm very happy, and I think we're going in a positive direction, that we actually have the talent in-house to be able to identify these needs, and we're not relying on an outside consultant. So I want to thank Dr. Moore for bringing you in, Mr. Bass.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
That
That's it, I have one.
concludes that. Can we take a 10-minute
Yes,
break?
please. Yes, I'm going to check on Mr. Fagan.
Board members, let's take a 10-minute break, okay? to order. It's 2:48, and this is the superintendent's workshop on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020. We have one item remaining, and that's item E, presentation of superintendent reorganization. Dr. Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an exciting moment for me, an exciting moment for the school district of Indian River County, and ultimately an exciting time to really move this work forward. So upon the beginning of my tenure as superintendent, even during the interview phase, we spoke about the opportunity to learn, to evaluate, come to a deep understanding as a result of the implementation of the initial phases of my entry plan. The first phase of that plan was to listen and to learn, to evaluate the current reality of the system, not only the academic outcomes, which were before and you're able to understand and read those data points prior to even visiting the county, but understand the system, the structures, the beliefs and behaviors that were in place ultimately to yield those outcomes. Over the last 4.5 months now, actually a little bit longer than that, this is an opportunity to apply a theory of practice that I know will put this system, this community, in a significantly better place. So change is not easy for anyone, but ultimately I present this item to you after a great deal of reflection, after a great deal of learning, after a great deal of listening, prayer, thought, and consideration to design the system in a way which ensures every student, all students, have the opportunity to connect to the adults within our system, feel accepted, feel embraced, and we provide them with world-class education, support, services, beliefs that ensure that not only do we maximize their potential, but that we empower them with the skills and the ability to spend a lifetime ultimately redefining and enhancing that potential. So as I dig into this work, I'm excited to speak for the last time where we were. And when I say speak for the last time, I'll share some academic outcomes that are embedded into our strategic plan as a starting point. And these are opportunities to understand where we look from a state perspective. And as I share these data points, I'll be upfront and honest. These data points are not reflective to who we are as a system and who we are as a group of educators and students. We're better than these current realities. When you look at early learning programs, we rank 40th of the 67 districts in terms of early learning proficiency or early learning readiness. When you look at ELA proficiency, we are 38th out of 67. When you look at math, which is grade 3 through 8, algebra and geometry, we are 40th. Middle school acceleration, we rank 56. All these rankings are compared to the 67 counties in our community. I highlight these data points because they are supported within our district strategic plan. Also in our district strategic plan is the gap between white students, African American students, where we rank 45th. The gap between white students and Hispanic students, 46. The gap between non-disabled and students with disabilities is 47th. And the gap between economically disadvantaged and non-economically disadvantaged is 48th. And they rank 45th, 46, 47, 48 out of 67. And I'll say it again, that is not where we should be. When you look at targets 2025 that we have defined and will be bringing for approval next month to our school board within our strategic plan, our goal in all of these areas to be in the top 10. You will not find a more aggressive strategic plan. I have told the story of how I said every school in this system should be an A, and the pushback that I got from my mentor regarding that's a big statement to make. And I've said, well, no, after I've gotten to know the community, the students, the teachers, I am extremely confident. The same statement was voiced to me once again over the weekend. Top 10 in all of these areas? Are you overextending? And the answer, once again, is absolutely not. So where we are going is going to be significant. This is an opportunity to organize ourselves in a way which ensures we will capture that success. And that success isn't just an academic outcome, it's the quality of life of children and the impact we as educators, we as adults, we as a system have on those children. So as I speak through some of those aggressive 2025 targets, the goal here, as I have said so many times, eliminate redundancies. Eliminate things that are repetitive, positions, programs, resources that don't serve or support a district's strategic plan. Ensure that we have systems of support in areas that will ensure transformation and growth for all students. There are many areas in this system that weren't being addressed, and as a result of not addressing them or having resources available to them, we as a system grow stagnant. Transformation, innovation, support, advocacy for our community, just a few areas in which we did not have the human capital or human resources in order to grow us as a system. The system as a whole is being reorganized from a district perspective to a cabinet, which is ultimately being reduced by one assistant superintendent, also eliminating the position of executive director. Senior staff will be identified as directors. The theory of action being applied throughout the strategic plan is to eliminate levels of delegation, eliminate levels of management to maximize individuals who can be responsible on key areas within the system, and then minimize those responsibilities so we can have deep analysis, deep support within those clearly defined areas. So minimizing individuals who are responsible for a number of things, managing a few people, and deepening and accelerating or advancing the number of individuals who are important for the most important things. The number of district staff, the number of senior staff, or cabinet and senior staff is comparable. It is the same as it was in the previous year. So we're not adding staff. We're shifting responsibilities. In fact, when you look at the elimination of redundancies, the newly defined positions in which we will speak about, and shifts in assignments and responsibilities, it is saving this district $371,000. Positions from one year to the positions to the next year, and in a cost savings of $371,000. Digging deeper and implementing a values-based budget system and looking at how we're spending entitlements and protecting the general fund, protecting teaching salaries, no instructional positions being eliminated as a result of this reorganization. Matter of fact, we're looking to save money to acknowledge the hard work that teachers are doing in this reorganization. But when you look at entitlements, we're saving $727,000 by asking ourselves what we're spending our money on, how does it align to our district's strategic plan, and making shifts from general fund to entitlements, significant cost savings. So we're excited to bring a $1 million savings as a result of this reorganization, all money in the general fund that can be protected and used to maximize our support and savings to compensate our teachers, improve social emotional learning within our system, and ensure that we're moving towards 21st century learning as an organization. The system in itself, not only will we have cabinet members and senior staff, and those will be the only administrative positions housed at the district, as well as coordinators, We will coordinate in offices. So each cabinet member, which will be led by chiefs, deputies, assistant superintendents, will oversee an office. Within those offices will be departments. So that is the organizational structure to bring a sense of normalcy regarding nomenclature. We thought it was important to clarify. In each office, there are slight changes, not in all offices, I'm sorry, but in a number of offices, there are some slight changes. When you look at school operations and human capital, there are a number of opportunities to streamline that work. Earlier this year, we implemented a school-based allocation model. We are also in the midst of an unprecedented time regarding student enrollment and children and families making decisions and where children will enroll in school. It has been well documented in my listening tour that we need to enhance and accelerate that first impression as a system that we offer our new employees. We need to streamline our ability to identify through human capital or human resources to move positions based on student enrollment. We now are implementing a budget-first priority, not a personnel, where enrollment shifts based on student enrollment. So we need to be designed in a way in order to ensure as enrollment shifts, we can be in response to that enrollment shifts and allocate teachers through human resources in a much more effective and meaningful way. Our customer service, the support that we've provided to our staff, streamlining these responsibilities through the Department of Human Resources is a key opportunity to improve morale across the organization, ensuring that all employees are receiving that very intimate support through human resources that they all deserve. Department of Recruitment, Retention, and Professional Practices. This is an opportunity really to ensure that we are looking differently at how we are recruiting and retaining teachers, as well as other qualified staff. In our previous practices, as documented by our African American achievement data, we fall short. And we have been working hard, but not as smart as we possibly can. This is intentional and really looking how we will do this work differently, how we will go out, recruit, retain the most skilled individuals to provide quality education to the school district of Indian River County students. So we are excited to narrow the focus and take a deep dive on how we're going to recruit and retain the most skilled staff across the nation here in the school district of Indian River County. Professional practices, enhancing that work, which was a unit of work that was marginalized or put to the side. And working with our teachers union, a great deal of frustration and consistency on how we're supporting employees and how we're going through professional standard practices. The systems should be the same regardless of the school you are in. The consequences should be evenly distributed regardless of the school you were in. There was a great deal of being inconsistent across our schools. This is an opportunity to provide that support to our supervisors, to provide that support to our principals. As an educator, it's not a skill that is at the forefront of our minds. It is a skill that needs to be developed. It is a skill that needs to be constantly supported. We want our administrators focusing in on building capacity, being in classrooms, and supporting teachers. In order to do that, we as a district, as a system, can provide additional support on how to go through professional practices and how to have those difficult conversations consistently across the entire organization to ensure that we both have the support and the accountability as an organization. Director of Employee and Labor Relations. This is an opportunity that we want to continue to build. And over the last several months, we have established rapport with our unions, and we continue to want to grow on that. Especially in this time of uncertainty, we need to be able to be as flexible as possible. and a system that cannot be flexible, especially with charter schools who are designed to be flexible, looming. We need to continue to strengthen that relationship and build a systems of trust so we can be nimble and move as flexibly as we possibly can to be response to what is a very, very unknown environment, not only in COVID-19, but as we design and move ourselves to the attainment of those 2025 targets. There's a great deal of relationship building and focus that we need to provide that work to. In addition to building those relationships, we're going to establish the Ethical Standards and Professional Practices Review Committee. This is a system that will allow us as a team to look at how consequences, how support is being provided across the system, not looking at names, but looking at gender, looking at ethnicity, and ensuring that we are being consistent and fair as a system. An opportunity to hold ourselves accountable to what we are doing and how we are providing support and how we are providing consequences to unfortunate behaviors that aren't or should not be displayed in our workplace. So that is an opportunity to really grow ourselves as a system. And then also the Department of Athletic, Student Activities, and Advocacy. Advocacy is key within any system. An opportunity for us to advocate for our teachers, advocate for our parents, advocate for our students. A central point of collecting that information as your superintendent and as a board, we know where we are falling short and we know how to shift or modify based on the information that we are providing. And not only are we collecting that information, we have a system within our district in which individuals with high character can advocate for our students when that advocacy needs to happen. Advocate for our teachers, advocate for our administrators, advocate for our support staff. Not having an office in which you're focused in on advocacy sometimes may mean you're not willing to listen, and that's not the case here. We want to hear about the services and support that we are providing at all levels of the organization and design ourselves in a way in which to respond accordingly to continuously grow ourselves as an organization. When it comes to student athletics and activities, we need greater oversight within that particular area. And as your superintendent, I want to give you a high level of comfort that we are on the up and up. We have systems in place. We have reviews that have been taking place. We understand where our students are. We understand who is supervising them. They are safe. They are protected, even though they may be on a field down the street or in another county. We have that level of oversight and support to build those programs. Quite honestly, the level of athletics and activities in this county is absolutely unlike anything I've ever seen. It is tremendous in the volume of offerings that we provide, and we want to continue to grow that, support that in a very, very meaningful way. When you look at the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, some organizational shifts there as well. We are moving away from the repetitive Office of Elementary Support and the Office of Secondary Support. And there were a number of shifts within that particular office. Upon my arrival, those individuals not only had the responsibilities of creating curriculum, content, instructional support for school sites and principals, but also supervising and supporting principals. And we quickly shifted away from that practice, and now we're taking even a deeper dive. Academic success is the ongoing, in-the-moment support at each of our particular schools, ensuring that we are in schools, monitoring the implementation of instructional practices, providing support and feedback. The creation and identification of curriculum and instructional resources is key in any educational system. If we are not, from a district perspective, identifying the absolute most meaningful resources and ensuring that they're being implemented correctly with fidelity, then ultimately we won't grow as a system. So the Department of Academic Success will provide that ongoing, in-the-moment support for all grade levels in all schools, while at the same time ensuring that the content, the curriculum maps that are being provided are the most relevant, most current, and most effective in meeting the needs of all of our students. Department of Educator Quality was an arm of the district in which we were falling short. And working with our unions, in this case specifically with our teachers union, heard consistently the quality of professional development is something that I need to look at both internally within the school sites as well as from a district perspective. This office ensures that that development will be spot on, it will be thought out, it will be not only current in terms of educational practices, but also within the times or the confines of the school year, ensuring that that professional development is timely, being done with high quality. It will ensure, as a system, we always have a bench. Who will be our principals? Who will be our assistant principals? Who will be our instructional coaches? Mr. Meyer and his team will always have to have an answer as to who's next, because as a system, as we begin to redefine and implement ourselves, we will continue to grow individuals, and the opportunity for advancement in our system will continue to grow. And then not having individuals ready to walk in who are assistant principal ready and principal ready means that there's a learning curve. That learning can't come at the cost of students who are sitting in our schools. So over the summer, I probably can assure you we are the system in the state who's done more development than any other system. And I'm very confident in that particular statement. Mr. Meyer and his team, our principals, our assistant principals, have dug in on a weekly basis around principal competencies, really exploring who we are as educators and where we need to continue to grow ourselves and grow as a system. And I think that continued work as it relates to educator quality will ensure that we're continuing to grow and invest in ourselves. Department of Instructional Innovation. Innovation is key if we're going to continue to move and meet the needs of our students to be successful in the 21st century. We need to modernize our classrooms. We need to ensure that we continue to grow and expand on choice, not just simply replicating some practices and things that were in schools, but completely rethinking and recreating educational opportunities that don't yet exist. And we need to modernize how we are providing instruction. And if we don't, our students will not be prepared to be successful in their secondary endeavors. Our schools, our experience, our environments need to ensure that they're ready for what is going to take place tomorrow. We need to continue to innovate, looking at program offerings, and create and define offerings for all students in all schools across our district. Also, looking at extended learning opportunities, this office will be responsible. It will be moved from the technical college to the Office of Innovation. This is an opportunity to recreate what after-school programming looks like, enrichment opportunities for students, remediation opportunities for students. This is an item that was identified early on in my time here, echoed by board members. This is key for us to maximize the success. If we have opportunities to engage and connect in supervising our students, why not provide them with quality experiences that not only provide them supervision, but provide them a heck of a lot of fun, as well, also providing them opportunities to have remediation for defined deficiencies that they may be experiencing. Excited to bring that work to this system. We're still not done with this particular office. Evaluations. I struggle tremendously with the system for evaluations. Having gone through the evaluations for each of our principals, it is a tool that needs to be overhauled. Very similar to my evaluation aligned to the district's strategic plan, opportunities to recreate evaluation system aligned to the school site principals and assistant principals identified goals within their school improvement plans. That is work that needs to be done. How we're providing feedback to our teachers through our evaluation system is an opportunity to partner with our teachers to update that process. And that really is a driving force of improvement as a system or as a organization that we need to invest in. So we will be overhauling over the course of the next year our valuation systems in partnership with our unions to create meaningful opportunities, not just to evaluate, but work collectively to inform and engage and grow the world's best educators here in the school district of Indian River County. Moving on to strategic planning and support services, this is an example of eliminating some redundancies, eliminating the executive director who oversaw both ESE and student services, and deepening the level of support that ESE and student services will be provided under the direction of directors. I feel, as a former school counselor, in considering that we're adding elementary counselors to all of our elementary schools as well as to each of our middle schools, there are opportunities to enhance that work. You look at our millage, there are opportunities to enhance through that psychological and physical safety initiative that we're proffering. We really need to be prepared in this difficult time that we are facing as a nation. Student services, unfortunately, has been a overlooked area, so we're excited to bring deep levels of leadership and planning to that particular area, while at the same time enhancing the quality of support that we're providing for our exceptional students as it relates to growing that. That has been an area upon my arrival in which a great deal of concern had been shared, and we want to continue to grow that. Department of Assessment, Accountability, and Virtual Education. This is the opportunity for us to be intentional around expanding our virtual education program. We will be allocating teachers to this program to begin enrolling students into our virtual programming. We'll make this announcement, obviously, right here, but publicly, intentionally, during our Facebook Live, providing links, additional information for our parents to gain a deeper understanding as to what it looks like to be in virtual education. And as Ms. Justice mentioned, not the provisional plan, I agree, but what virtual education looks like, how it differs from the provisional plan that we put together, and the flexibility that is provided through that environment. Also, there are 879 students in this county who participate in a homeschooling program. I see there to be multiple opportunities for us to expand services and support to those families through enrichment courses or academic courses, providing them a safe space, whether it be to come to a campus because I want to take this enrichment course or this academic course, or I want to take a blended model where I want to take this one particular virtual course. I think with the volume of individuals who have made that decision, there are services and support that we could provide, claim FTE for those particular courses, but more importantly, also provide that system of support, allowing them to gain a better understanding of the levels of support and services that are provided by the school district of Indian River County. And then Department of Strategic Initiatives and System Compliance. And this is an office that holds this work together. And being part of a very large system, a district that is not aligned through strategic initiatives, begins to go off in many different directions, begins to voice directives to the one principal, providing 9 different deadlines on the same day. We need a keeper of the organizational plan, a keeper of the strategic plan, ensuring that it's being filtered down across the organization in a way with full compliance, that the systems, that the procedures that have been created that hold this whole strategic plan together are being done in a way in which is connected, organized, and ensures that everything that we do as a system reflects the quality of who we are as a system. So I said a lot, board members, excited to have this opportunity, excited really to change the chapter, begin a new chapter moving on to the next phase of my superintendency, were really to begin to provide the highest levels of support to our principals and to our teachers. And as a result of that support, we can create schools across this district in which all students, A, feel accepted, they feel loved, they feel valued, they walk in and they feel safe and they feel comfortable. And as a result of our relationships that we establish them, we can provide them with the skills, the knowledge, the ability, the behaviors to not only identify their potential, as I said, but to fully maximize and continue to recreate that potential. So, as I said earlier, this is a lot. I understand that. This is an opportunity for me to connect with these individuals who are being impacted today, fully to explain these are the opportunities. Wasn't done in isolation, was done in partnership, was done in a way in which I would have the opportunity to listen, in some cases push, in some cases say, you know what, I see something in you that someone saw in me 9, 10 years ago, and I want to leverage that for your benefit, but also for the benefit of kids. And here we are today with this opportunity to move us forward to ensure we obtain those 2025 targets that we've established for ourselves. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. A lot of information.
I tried to be shorter than I was last time when I did this.
No. Mrs. Barrenborg?
Sure, thank you. Yes, there was a lot. It's massive. Change is good. Change is difficult. I appreciate the fact that you had conversations with anybody that asked you questions. I know I asked you a lot of questions on this, and I came back with more. So I appreciate you answering all of those. We don't need to get into all those now. But I will say this, that there have been some questions about kind of the way things have been done, whether or not they're reversed as far as job descriptions being posted at the same time you've already announced the person. Could you go into a little bit more depth about that part of it?
Absolutely, through the chair. Just an opportunity as we really began to understand where we had gaps as a system, going through the end-of-year evaluations with principals, as well as throughout the year, opportunities really to assess, ask questions regarding where they saw themselves and where they wanted to go, and create opportunities for a number of individuals that were a need of this particular system. So I understand it, but the concern and question, but not done in isolation, not done in any other way. A number of conversations taking place over the course of the last 6 months to identify, A, what the system needs, and B, who are key individuals within our system that can fulfill those particular roles.
Go ahead.
Okay, I have a follow-up.
Go ahead, Mrs. Barrenborg.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Remember when you first hired Mr. Bass and Mr. Meyer? Sorry to throw your names out there. But I made a comment that I'll allow it this time, and that in the future I would appreciate it if you would open it up, interview. I asked you lots of good questions about that, I thought, yesterday, and I accept your answers on where you want to go with this, but I'm going to caution you that please, in the future, make sure that you have a job description up there posted. We interview, we're being fair. I think in the way that you did it this time, I was okay with the fact that it was fair. You talked to every single principal, you talked to all the people involved in all the moves. So, I'm okay with it now after all of our conversations, but I really would like to put that out there that I think you need to do it in that order next time or in future.
Through the chair, that is an assurance that I am more than happy to provide you as a board member, as well as the other board members, that we'll be able to do that now. This was a designed structural shift as a result of the reorganization. And moving forward, we won't have to do this again. But at the same time, we will have minor shifts in which we could follow as you just stated.
Okay. Dr. Schiff?
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments Mrs. Berenborg just made, because I too have received some communication about concerns about those things. So thanks for voicing that. This is comprehensive. This is bold, and I acknowledge and appreciate the thought that went into this. This is clearly not a document nor a structure that you came up with last night. This is clearly something, right, that you've been working on for a long time. And I want to acknowledge that when we as a board chose you as our superintendent, we didn't choose you to do more of the same of what we've already done. We hired you specifically because we wanted you to transform this district, or at least I did. I suppose I shouldn't speak for my fellow board members. For me, that was a driving force in wanting to transform this district, because like you pointed out, the fact that we are 45th, 48th, 43rd in key indicators is completely unacceptable, and it should never have been acceptable. So using that as a jumping off point, or looking at where we've been and where you believe we can go, despite the fact that you are being cautioned against such bold goals, I acknowledge and I respect. Change is hard, and there's a lot of parts in this reorganization that I will admit are ask us to really reconsider how we do business in this district, to move from structures, as you pointed out, like executive directors of secondary education and elementary education, which is a more traditional structure, into what you are creating as a far bolder structure, and asking us to reconsider how we allocate and designate work is a big shift. But because that's exactly what, again, I won't speak for the fellow board members, but for me, that's what I hired you to do. I hired you to take on a bold shift, to really look at where we've been and where you believe we can go. And I know that change is hard, that it's confronting, that it is impossible to please everybody. And if there's something I've learned in the decades I've been a working adult on this planet, it's to learn to walk towards challenge and change rather than away from it. And I appreciate that that's what you're asking us to do here. You're asking us not to shy away from change or challenge, but actually to walk towards it and to trust your belief that these are the changes we need in order to accomplish bold goals of being in the top 10 on all of these indicators, where we are now in the bottom 5 or 10. I appreciate your acknowledgement that this is not only not simply resource neutral, but actually provides additional resources, and acknowledging that where those resources might go. And I'll articulate here that for me, in saving that amount of money, where I am interested in seeing it go, as we've alluded to in the past, is certainly towards teachers. And while the governor has asked us to allocate money towards new teachers, I am hoping this gives us an opportunity to take some of these savings and put them towards retaining our senior experienced teachers. You also talked about it going towards SEL, and I appreciate that. SEL is complex and rich, and there are many components of it, which I won't go into here, but I appreciate that awareness. And I would add to that, as you've stated in the past, attention to how we increase equity in the district. I also appreciate that in saving the money, it increases our financial stability by having that money, I believe, go back into enhancing the stability of our general fund, and that there are no instructional positions eliminated through this reorganization. So thank you for reiterating and acknowledging that. I also appreciate your attention to that student services has really been overlooked. That's a department that has suffered certainly for as long as I have been here. And I appreciate the ways that you've considered reconstructing this district in order to give specific attention to that unit as well as others. So mostly in this long monologue, I'm not really asking a lot of questions, because I hear what you're asking me to do is trust you. And I'm going to take that leap here Although, as you know, we've had many conversations about this, and right, yes, we've had a lot of conversations that I know, I believe you have with other board members. But I thank you for really the depth of this work, because I think it's innovative, I think it's creative, I think it doesn't rely on traditional educational and academic strategies. And I appreciate your attention to that. So I'm going to stop here because that was mostly acknowledgement and not a question. So thanks.
Okay. Other board member comments?
Yes.
Ms.
Thank you.
Mrs. Justice?
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sork. I would agree with Dr. Schiff. This is certainly, and Mrs. Berenberg, certainly a thoughtful document. I'm excited for the change. I like change, and I think our students deserve it. Just a quick message to the staff that has been here through the past 4 years that are currently taking on new roles. Sometimes I think we got the rest of you instead of the best of you, because you had so much on your plate that it was almost impossible to really be good at any one thing. So I'm excited because not only does this help to chart a course for us for the future, but it allows us to get the most from our staff, to truly unfold the full potential of everyone that works with us, what they're good at, where they can excel, how they can help others to do the same. So thank you for Dr. Moore for taking the time to interview and to really sit and discuss with people what their jobs are, what their jobs should be, what they feel their job should be, and how they can better use their skills and resources to help this district. I see not only an investment in the future and in change, but also an investment in staff that has been here and in understanding and respecting the work that has been done. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to the future.
Okay. Mrs. Rosario?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Moore, thank you for the work that you've been doing and for the vision that you have for the district to reach our goal. I just wanted to let the public know the school board's position in the reorganization of the district. I agree with what all the board members said, all of my fellow board members, in the reorganization and all the changes that are happening. But it's important for the public to also understand that it's our responsibility as board members, as elected officials, to help to set the vision and the goals for the district, to adopt policies, to hire and evaluate you and our superintendent, and our attorney, and to oversee and adopt the budget for the district. There's a few other things in there, of course, but what we are not supposed to do is get into the weeds of the daily work of the district. And I think many people, and ignorantly, even while I was running for school board, I had a different viewpoint of what my position was, even as, a candidate. But coming into the position, it's quite different than what I first imagined. So our position to not get into the weeds of things are to tell you who to hire and who to fire on every other level, basically. You come to us with the recommendations. We provide feedback, and it has been a wonderful dialogue back and forth behind closed doors, on the phone calls, however it has happened. But I can say that conversations between you and I have been quite regular and quite frequent on this topic of reorganizing the district moving forward. And if I had any suggestions or feedback, I would like to publicly state that you have been very open to hear them, and some things have changed. Some things have been considered based on those. But unless there is just cause, which Mrs. DeAgresta can can certainly attest to, because we've had this conversation in the past, unless there is just cause, I still question what that means, but unless there is just cause, unless there's something, unethical, something illegal, something that really crosses the line, and is quite egregious to someone that you're recommending for a position, other than that, it's really incumbent upon us to acknowledge what you have brought forth and allow you to do your job, support you in moving the district forward so that we can see the change. And if we come against every decision that you make without rubber stamping everything that you bring forward, but if we don't support you in these requests that you bring forth to us, then we're just going to be running around in this hamster wheel constantly, and we're never really going to see change. So I know that as board members, it's very important for us to have a clear vision for the district. And right now, if I can speak on behalf of everybody, our clear vision aligns with yours. Otherwise, we wouldn't have hired you. We're on the same page in that sense. And our communication and the actions and how we communicate these changes with staff, with the people that have come on board, based on what you've told me, they have been very fair. You have been very available. If anybody had any follow-up questions or concerns, it's my understanding that you have met with people sometimes even twice and 3 times over some of how this is going to look, what it might entail for some of these changes. But the collaboration and the work as a team has been quite evident. So I want the public to know that based on what I have experienced in working with you, moving towards these changes have been very, very positive. I have had some emails and some concerns over 2 transfers, but otherwise, and even when I brought it to your attention, you told me you already handled it. You already spoke to those people. So, and they were appreciative, and they understood, and you were already one step ahead of me even reaching out to you. So other than saying that I am excited for what is ahead, I wanted to talk a little bit about our position as board members. And it's worth saying, because I know a lot of people are listening right now because they want to know what the changes are moving forward and how the organizational chart, you are going to post the organizational chart and what that looks like, because people don't know who they're supposed to report to and so on and so forth. But after it's all approved, I'm sure that you will. So that's where we stand as board members, as elected officials, not to tell you who to hire and fire, but to allow you to do your work unless there is just cause. So I have not found any just cause in any of what you've brought forth. I am happy to support you in the changes moving forward. You have thought this out, even to the cost savings to the district, which is tremendous at this point. And I'm very happy that we hired you. I wanted to continue in this path because part of being a great leader is looking behind you and finding who is actually following your lead. You're not leading no one. You are leading a team of people. And when they look toward your guidance, they know that you have a plan and that you've thought this through, totally thought this through. So that makes a big difference when we want to also embrace, a new culture and higher morale in the district. So thank you for that, and just thank you. I appreciate all the work.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Rosario. I want to point out the fact that Dr. Moore, whenever he went through this, he didn't necessarily begin this until after we had our strategic plan in place. So all these positions that he had developed to meet the strategic goals, you know, it aligns with all the mission that we have over the next 5 years. So one thing that I wasn't really for sure how it was going to work, but he went out and he actually found the talent here in the district that was being underutilized. And typically when you have new leadership come in, especially from out of county, like Dr. Moore had, they sometimes bring from their areas that talent, but I'm very impressed that you went out and you interviewed basically the individuals that we have here, and you're giving them those opportunities to rise up to the occasion. And I'm proud of our staff. I know that they're going to do a great job, the individuals that he's putting in these positions, and I'm proud of the leadership development that Mr. Bass and Dr. Moore and Mr. Meyer and the cabinet's putting together, because that's what we want to do here. If we're going to really tackle morale and culture, we have to develop our talent within and give them the opportunities versus always going outside and taking the outside approach when we're looking at talent. So I appreciate that. And I'm sure our staff appreciates that for you going that route versus looking outside the district in addition to filling those positions. One other area that I want to say that I'm so happy that you finally fixed it was our after-school programs, our extended day. I'm very excited about this. I think it's something that's been long overdue, and I'm happy that even though it took 3.5 years for us to get here, we're on the right path on this. One area that I don't think you mentioned, and I think it's something that this board can be proud of because it's something that we identified as a board a couple of years ago that we needed, was that person to be able to write the grants. And I think you had forgotten to mention
Through the
that.
chair, but that is part, I'm
Do
sorry.
you want to mention that?
Part of the innovation office, that office will ultimately, moving forward, begin to fund itself as we begin to create opportunities to connect to outside funding sources. So we're going to beef up that over the course of the year, and you'll be excited to be approving the grants that we bring forward as a result of that work.
Yes, and I think that's so important because especially when we look at going into the 21-22 budget year, and we're already being told, you know, from the state, we're looking at a 10 to 20% reduction, is that we have that key person in place that can write those grants and help us fill in the gaps if that time does come that we're going to be having our funds reduced. So I appreciate you taking that on and adding it into the job descriptions. I just encourage the public to take a look at the descriptive job description and the background and rationale behind the reorganization. Typically what happens is we would get a reorganization chart that would come to us, and it would have names or titles and who's going under what department. That is coming, as Mrs. Rosario said, but this is the first time that, since I've been on the board, there's really the background and rationale to explain why we're doing what we're doing. We're not just doing it because we want to see change. There's actually a strategy behind it. So I would encourage the public to take a look at that. It's in our backup. And then also in the backup, we do have our School District of Indian River County job descriptions. And those are very precise in what the job duties are going to be. And also in that, it does have who reports to who on those, and the job goes. a lot of good information, a lot of good changes, and I look forward to the individuals that you have recommended to see the talent I know that they're going to do a good job, especially under your leadership, because as something Dr. Moore said when we hired him, is we're going to make some changes, and we're going to look at those changes, and we might fall, but we're going to fall forward. We're going to learn from those, and we're going to help each other, and we're going to grow as an organization. And that's what I see here with this new reorganization that he's brought forward. So I just appreciate all the board members for getting us to where we are right now, and we're on a good path.
Madam Chair, thank you. Thank all of the board members. This wasn't decisions that were taken lightly. This was deep conversation with each of you, with senior staff, with cabinet, with a number of principals to create a system like no other system. And yes, it is bold. Yes, it is different. But I honestly believe with the talent that I have found here in this community, the commitment, the passion, the dedication that collectively our teachers and principals have, we can do things that no other system has ever done. And I say that, and it sounds, hey, that's the cool thing, that's the right thing to say. I honestly believe it to be the truth. And this is my home. This is where I live. So to have the opportunity to contribute, to lead in a very prayerful way, I'm very excited and proud to do. So I thank you for all of your support and all of your dialogue and conversation leading to this point. This is a partnership, and I'm very appreciative for the support and guidance I have received along the way. As it relates to the item, Mr. Fagan is diligently working on it. I'll provide an email update and then a brief explanation regarding what our next steps would be to ensure that we are normed on how to move forward as it relates to that particular item. But I know I still owe that, and we'll have it ready for that board meeting.
Okay, perfect. All right, board members, we will be back at 6 p.m. We're going to adjourn at 3:45.